Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of 219 Green Connect. This is your host, Kathy Sipple, and we meet on this podcast as well as online on our website, 219greenconnect.com, to talk about topics of interest regarding the environment and natural living in Northwest Indiana. And I want to thank Metro Recycling for their continued sponsorship of this program. They encourage people to think beyond the blue box. So find them and more information about how to recycle at wheredoirecycle.com. Metro Recycling has several convenient locations throughout the Northwest Indiana. And with me today, I have Jerry Ashmore, and he is a senior Dharma teacher. So thank you so much, Jerry, for joining us today. We want to talk about your website, therapeutic-meditation.com, and some of the great services and programs that you're offering throughout Northwest Indiana. So I'd like to start off by saying, what is a senior Dharma teacher, and how did you end up being one?
Well, Dharma is in this context is the word for the Buddhist teaching. About a long time ago, about 1978, I was having personal difficulties, and I realized that I needed to get my head straight. So I went to the library and I started searching. I didn't have any kind of a spiritual path at the time, and I went to the library and started searching, and I discovered Buddhism, and it seemed to me that it was a practice that if I actually worked at it, I might solve my problems, but I would have to test the procedure first. So I did that. I started meditating out of a book a couple times a day. I was an old distance runner, so I knew how to train. So it looked a lot like training. So I started meditating twice a day, and I Xeroxed a copy of the Eightfold Path, and I carried it around with me, and I just checked in on it every once in a while, let it flow through my brain, and tried to live it. Right off the bat, I just went all out at it. And so that's a long story short. I practiced by myself for 5 years. I practiced alone. I just meditated twice a day and tried to walk the Eightfold Path. And then they had a restaurant in Hobart, a Korean restaurant in Hobart. I went to dinner there one night and got introduced to the owner, who was Buddhist, and she introduced me to a monk who came over from Chicago, and we had a great meal together. And from that moment on, I started going to the Korean Buddhist temple in Chicago every couple of weeks. And eventually I was led to an organization called the Quantum School of Zen, which is a Korean Buddhist lineage that was founded by Zen Master Sun San back in 71. And from that point on, I stayed with the school. I've been with the school ever since the mid-'80s. And a Dharma teacher is, the only thing it means is I am eligible to teach retreats. I could conduct a retreat, and I'm eligible to teach meditation. And that's pretty much. We have a Zen group in Hobart called the Empty Circle Zen Group. We meet on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. and Saturday morning at 7 a.m. And it's a regular Buddhist practice, and if you add up all the people in it, we have about 40, and we generally get about anywhere from 8 to 12 in a practice. So that's pretty much it. I teach meditation. That's what it amounts to.
Wonderful. So are those locations and get-togethers on your website if somebody wanted to find out more about those?
Well, we have to actually have an Empty Circle website. So,
okay.
Yeah, you can find out more. We'll have all that information on our website.
Okay, great. So again, I just want to give a shout-out for the website, therapeutic-meditation.com. And just Jerry has advised me that he may change the website name, in the future, but that domain will still get you there. So if you end up with a different name sometime, if you're listening to it next year, don't panic. It's the same guy. So
I would like to emphasize something else. Although I am a practicing Buddhist, the therapeutic-meditation website is about secular application of this practice of mindfulness. In fact, in our Empty Circle Zen group in Hobart, there's about 40 people on our list. They come and go. They never show up at once, of course, but only 5 of us are actual Buddhists. Taking the precepts and all that. So this practice is not necessarily religious. I mean, you can make it religious if you want, but to get the fruit of the practice, you don't have to become a Buddhist.
Gotcha. Well, that's nice. It sounds like it's very inclusive and inviting, and you want people just to get the benefits. And what are some of the benefits of meditation?
Well, okay, let's define meditation first. From a mindfulness practice point of view, from a Buddhist point of view, meditation is about paying attention. It's about coming back to the moment. Usually, there's many techniques to do this, but the main one is conscious breathing. I mean, that's why it's a secular activity. Because everybody's breathing, and it has nothing to do with religion. So coming back to the moment with conscious breathing is one aspect, and basically it's paying attention in a special way, though. It's paying attention. You actually are in the moment with what you're doing, and also how you are reacting internally to what you're doing. So by doing that, you get to develop, you get a certain sense of tranquility by just being here, rather than in your mind that's wandering into the past and future all the time, worrying or feeling guilty. And you get to see patterns in your life. And so when you start to see patterns in your life of why you do things, you realize that you are basically just reacting to various triggers that come up. A walks into the room, I don't like them, therefore I get angry, I feel anger, or whatever it is. And if you act it out, then all sorts of problems come from that. So it's basically about paying attention. Now there's many different ways to do this. Most people think of meditation as just sitting. But in our point of view, sitting is very important because it develops a high level of concentration. But actually everything we do is meditation. Everything we do. So if you don't have much time for sitting, well, that's okay. I recommend 5 minutes a day if that's all you can handle. But the rest of the day, you pay attention to what's going on and what you're doing and how you're reacting to what you're doing. And pretty soon you get to know yourself. You get to know why you do things, and you can change. Then you can change. You can stop doing the destructive things that are plaguing your life. We all have life traps. And you start to cultivate action, thought, speech, and action that actually lead you toward liberation, I guess. Liberation from old negative patterns that have plagued you forever. That's the fruit of meditation.
So you'd probably be a lot happier, and I would intuit then probably healthier as well if you let go of all those negative emotions. Well,
it's all stress, right?
Right.
So you could call it stress reduction if you like. It's just 2,500 years old, and it's pretty sophisticated psychology.
So it sounds like it's made a pretty big difference for you. You're obviously passionate about it.
Yes, it's made a huge difference. I was struggling with I'd been through a divorce in 71, and I remarried, but I didn't give up some of my old habits. I basically had an alcohol problem. And pretty soon, after a while, I started to see the old storm clouds brewing. And since I had an epiphany at one time, I said, you know what? It's not that I don't have the right wife, the right car, the right job, or anything like that. It's me. It's my mind. It's my attitude toward what I'm doing. But I didn't know how to deal with that. So, in Jerry Ashmore's sense, I went to the library and started reading. I didn't have a spiritual past, so I just started reading everything I could get my hands on. And since I was a psych minor in college, when I came across Buddhism and the description of the practice in the Eightfold Path, I said to myself, I think if I did this, I know I wouldn't get worse, I'd probably get better. But then one of the things the Buddha said was, don't believe me because things are written in an old book. Don't believe anything because a bunch of people believe it. Don't believe it because I said it. If it sounds reasonable and it might help, try it, test it. And if it does, continue. So I did. I tested it, and I've been at it ever since.
I love that. I studied Kabbalah for a little bit of time in Chicago, and the rabbi told us that the very first night. I'm not Jewish, but I found that very comforting. He said, don't believe anything I tell you. Belief implies doubt. He said, try it. If it works for you, then it will just become part of you, and you own it. And you don't even have to think about it anymore. So it sounds very similar.
All these wisdom traditions are sort of the same.
Yeah, I think so.
But they're different. They're same yet different.
Little slightly different path to get there, but it seems like especially mystical traditions to me, like you end up with a unified thought. From the top of the mountain, the view kind of all looks the same, but how people got there might be very different. But, the best path for them. So that's great. Well, I'm glad it's been good for you. Do you recall what those books were, by any chance, that you got back in the 70s?
A lot of books. I just wrote the book I'm describing in the beginning was just a book written by there's three forms of Buddhism. There's the Theravadan, which is the older school Buddhism of Burma and Laos and that area. It's called Southern Buddhism. And then there's Northern Buddhism that's called the Mahayana, which is China, Korea, Japan, and now it's in the West. Then there's Vajrayana Buddhism, which is Tibetan. So it was a Theravadan book, and it was just a very simple, straightforward explanation of the path, which is what I needed then, because I wasn't hunting for philosophy so much. I was hunting for something to do.
Right.
Way to live.
It's interesting that you brought up. I did not know much about those different, branches or types of Buddhism, but I had taken what's it called? It's on BeliefNet.com. I think there's a Beliefometer or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Quiz. And I had taken that years ago and found out that my beliefs were very closely aligned with Mahayana Buddhism. And I've never been to a service, or as far as I know, not really read a lot of books on it, but it's interesting how you grow up in some kind of faith tradition or not, but what's actually in your brain, might resonate much more with people that are in some other building. So I think it's great that
Mahayana,
you can do it.
the word means great. Maha means great. The word means great vehicle. And the difference between Mahayana and the older form, the Theravadan, I mean, the difference is almost academic. In actual practice, it's probably not that different. But how things are. Human beings complicate things, But the difference is the ideal of Mahayana is the Bodhisattva. That means enlightenment being is what the word means. But what it means, everybody starts practicing for themselves, because they want more tranquility. Like me, my life was starting to have problems again, so I needed to clear it up. And so I started practicing for myself. But what happens is, over time, you realize that other people are suffering too. And since you have begun to tune in on your own stuff, so to speak, work your way through your own personal swamp, you start to notice that other people are suffering, but maybe they don't know what to do, or maybe they need some help. So over time, the ideal of Mahayana Buddhism is to not only practice for yourself, but to practice for others. And that includes the planet. That includes that a lot. Nature. That includes all beings. All sentient beings are worthy of life. So we must promote life for everybody.
I love that, and that ties in really well to why I think your topic fits very well with natural health, and also with how human beings can do something better for the environment, and especially our local, wonderful environment that we have with the Indiana Dunes and other great places. And then, this is kind of reminding me, too, the first time we met was just a few weeks ago, and I told you that when you said that, it reminded me of a book that I read quite a long time ago, which was Power versus Force. I could not recall the author's name at that time, but it's by David R. Hawkins, and he was talking about that very, very thing, how as one person really furthers their potential, you can impact others, exponentially. And so it's really worth it to do, not just for you, but for all the people that you can influence, kind of like the butterfly.
Well, one of the features of mindfulness practice, I call it mindfulness practice, which is what the essence of Buddhist practice. Mindfulness practice does is it teaches you to pay attention to your thought, speech, and action, and how it affects those around you, and how it affects your environment. So, to me, an ecology-minded person, the practice of mindfulness can't do anything but make it more effective.
Right. If you were being mindful, would you throw that litter on the path when you're at the Indiana Dunes? Probably not.
Exactly.
I mean, that's just one really
what's
simple.
the content of your garbage? Just pay attention to everything.
Right. Exactly. So, how do your meditation groups go? What would somebody see if they decided to come to one of your circles? What does it typically look like?
Okay, well, it's an actual. We meet at the Unitarian Church. I'm a member of Unitarian, so I actually have a dual path. I'm a Unitarian / Buddhist, I guess, if you want to. If you know anything about Unitarianism, that's not much of a problem. Actually,
aren't you a? Don't they call it a Yubu? Are you a Yubu? Is that what they call it?
Well, I don't know.
No.
I guess you could say that, yeah.
I think I've heard that before.
Well, anyway, so we meet at 7. I'll just give Tuesday. Most people who are checking it out come on Tuesday. Saturday morning's a little more elaborate, but it's an actual Buddhist practice. We meet. If someone wants to come to our session on Tuesday at 7, I would rather they get there a little early so I could give them instructions. And we have all the mats and cushions. We have it laid out. We have an altar. I'll explain what the altar means, because Buddha's not a god. It's just a symbol of your inner self, of your highest human potential, basically. But it's got an altar that we inherited from our teacher, so it's sort of it's a Korean-style altar, basically. And then we have a practice. We do. There's a couple chants, but basically it revolves around sitting. Zen is the Japanese word for meditation. So a Zen practice emphasizes sitting. So what we'll do is after we open the altar and there's a little bit of bowing, not full-fledged bowing, but it's out of respect for everybody there. There's a form, a ritual involved, and so it's sort of simple. And then we open the altar and then we start sitting, and we sit for 20 minutes. Then I hit this thing called a chakti, and we all stand up and get in a line behind each other, and we walk, and then we do walking meditation. So we do sitting meditation, then walking meditation for 5 minutes, and then we stop our cushions again, and I hit it again, and we sit down for another 20 minutes. So basically, you'll have 2 20-minute sessions and a 5-minute walking session, and then we have a concluding chant. Real simple chants about compassion, and then we sit in what we call a circle talk in our tradition. You sit in a circle. I usually give a little Dharma talk, and then we go around the circle. And if you want to comment, you can. If you want to ask a question, you can. Or just most people comment about how the practice affects their life, pretty much that's it. How the practice affects their life, and then that's it. And then we break up and have tea and cookies if you want to stay. And that's pretty much it. It's a regular formal practice. It's not a lecture or anything like that.
Yeah.
Although there is a Dharma talk.
Well, it sounds like it'd be very peaceful and enlightening. Now, what is the device that you said that you sound to begin the? Oh,
a chakti. It's a bamboo clapper.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a bamboo clapper that starts and stops the section. When we do a chant, we have a thing called a motak. It's like a howl instrument that cluck, cluck, it beats time, basically.
Okay.
So that's it.
I'm kind of dying to hear what it would sound like. You can't mimic it.
It's a howl. It's howled out. So
hollowed out.
It's got like a howl cluck sound, I guess.
Okay. I can kind of picture that. Now, something that popped up for me on my Facebook feed just yesterday, I think you told me you're not a Facebook guy, but there was something called the Drepung Gomang Miller Beach Sacred Arts Tour, and I was curious if you knew anything about that.
I don't know anything about it, no.
Okay. Yeah, it looked like it says that it's a monastery that I believe is located downstate, and they do...
Oh, it sounds like a Tibetan. It's a Tibetan, whatever it is.
It is.
A Tibetan lineage.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So, and I guess they visit Miller Beach, in Gary yearly.
Well, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I know what that is. They come and do a sand mandala.
Yeah.
A mandala is a geometric pattern that sort of reflects the nature of the universe. Everything's connected, basically. And it's a lot of different colored sand, and the monks do it, and it's very elaborate. And they spend a week or so doing it, and they've got, I guess they do silently do a mantra while they're doing it for 8 or 9 hours a day. And it's a practice that they have, but it's beautiful, but it's also intricate. And then when they're done with it, they have a ceremony and dedicate it to world peace or something, and then they destroy it. Because that's one of the primary Buddhist principles is impermanence. Everything is impermanent. Don't cling to anything.
But at least they took a picture of it to post to Facebook, or somebody did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They do it every year.
Yeah, we can enjoy the picture, but I think
they used to go to Munster.
It's a good lesson. It's a good lesson not to get too attached. But, you know, we have mentioned a few times now the Eightfold Path, and I try to make a habit of not, you know, dropping a term and then not explaining it if it's something that people might not be familiar with. So I had to Google it and bring it up for me. There are, you know, as you might guess, 8 parts of the Eightfold Path. Is there one particular that you'd like to talk about, what's been important for you, or what you think might resonate with people that are, you know, concerned about the environment? I think you mentioned mindfulness.
The last 3 sections of the Eightfold Path actually apply to the practice of meditation. It's right effort, right mindfulness, which is what we've been talking about, and right concentration. So that's actually the meditative part of the practice. Right effort is basically, to make it really simple, is you try to cultivate positive things in your life in thought, speech, and action. You cultivate positive thought, speech, and action, and try to let go or transcend or eliminate negative speech and action. Basically, is what you do. That's right effort. And then right mindfulness is paying attention in the way I described, always coming back to the moment, what you're doing. It's an existential thing. The important thing is right now. Right now.
Right.
And when you lose it, you'll lose it in your mind. All your worries are in the future, for example.
Right.
All your fears
is in the past.
And all your guilt and regret is in the past, although regret is sometimes useful because it means you don't want to do it again, you know, so it's useful. But and then in the now is where you live. You don't live in the past and future. You live here. So you keep coming back to here. Now, if you're an environmentalist, this is very important. This is very important for your thought, speech, and action in the support of a healthy planet is right now. It's not in the future. It'll never get here. It'll be another now when it gets here. And the past is over. So right now, that's what we do. Come back right now. That's mindfulness. And concentration means that's where the sitting meditation comes in. You learn how to concentrate the mind so you can focus on the now even more effectively.
Well, I'm sure we don't have time to fully explore the other 5 parts of the Eightfold Path, but could you just tell us a little bit about them?
Why? Actually, they use the word right, but actually that's all this stuff's translated from Sanskrit and Pali, ancient Indian languages. It really means wise view, wise effort. So it starts with wise view, which is everything's impermanent, everything's connected. Now there's a direct relation to the environment. Everything's connected, and when you don't remember that, when you act as if things that you desire are permanent, suffering arises. Basically, if you forget about impermanence and interconnection of things, then suffering arises. Actually, the Eightfold Path is part of the Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truths, it's the 4th part. Four Noble Truths are this. First of all, human life contains lots of anxiety, lots of suffering of all different kinds, you know? Mm-hmm. And dukkha is the Sanskrit word, dukkha. But that's the bad news. But the good news is it starts, if you understand what causes suffering, which is attachment and aversion and indifference, if you understand this and you let go of attachment and aversion and indifference, then that's the 2nd noble truth, let going of the cause of suffering. And the 3rd noble truth is, but if you do that, then you can be free. And the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path of how to be free. And it starts with wise view, which is everything's impermanent and connected. And when you are too attached to the way you want to see it, actually, if you're too attached to your egotistical viewpoint, suffering arises. I, me, and mine. That's all you think about is I, me, and mine. So basically, that's wise view. And then wise thought is the thoughts that stem from wise view. You know, if you think there's everything connected, your thought stream will be different than if you think you're the center of the universe, you know, so forth and so on.
Kind of takes you out of your ego
that
view.
Takes care of the philosophical viewpoint. Mm-hmm. And then you've got you have to relate to the world. So you have wise speech. You know, speak as if other people are as important as you are, you know. Mm-hmm. Wise speech, and you got wise action, which is your precepts, moral precepts, which are basically don't harm yourself or others. Basically, they're all versions of that. Don't harm yourself or others. And then the wise livelihood is if you're going to earn a living, make sure you're not harming the environment, or you're living the way you make a living doesn't harm other people. And then let's see, that's 5. Okay, and then you got the last 3, which I described: wise effort, wise mindfulness, and wise concentration.
Thank you.
And the beauty of it is they're all connected. If you do one, you do everything else.
It's kind of a gateway drug to next.
Yeah, it's not a linear thing. It's sort of a spider web type.
Is it kind of like I've heard this term recently. It keeps coming up for me. Spiral of ascension. Does that mean anything for you, or does that have any relevance? None. Okay.
No. The primary principle in all Buddhist philosophy and practice is something called dependent origination. Nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything is connected to something else, and if you remove that something else, you don't have it. That's why everything's impermanent. It's in flux.
Right.
It's like a house of cards. Pull one out, and they all fall.
When I brought up the image, to just kind of remind myself what are the parts of the Eightfold Path, it seems like a wheel is an image that keeps coming up. Does the wheel?
Wheel, right? Got 8 spokes.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit about that?
Well, it's the same principle. The Eightfold Path is really not a linear thing. It's wise view will lead to wise speech, and wise speech supports wise view. And they're all connected, which supports wise mindfulness. And it's like if you do one, you have to do the others too.
So the metaphor of the wheel is kind of
correctly. You have to have wise view.
Okay.
Wise thought, wise speech, so forth.
Okay. So the wheel is just about keeping it in motion.
There's 8 spokes to the wheel, but it's a representation of the Eightfold Path.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I've got that. Well, I really appreciate you sharing with us about your journey and what you're doing out there in the world. A half an hour goes awfully fast when you're talking to somebody fascinating, such as yourself.
Well, thank you.
So, again, I want to thank Jerry Ashmore for being with us today and talking about his website and his meditation services that he leads at the Unitarian Church in Hobart. You can find out more about Jerry and how to contact by visiting his website, therapeutic-meditation.com. You've been listening to another episode of 219 Green Connect with Kathy Sipple. And again, I want to thank our sponsor, Metro Recycling. Practice right action and put your recyclables in the blue box or take them to Metro Recycling for thinking outside the blue box. You might be surprised at all the different things they can recycle there, including vinyl siding. That's new. A lot of good new things, and we're stretching the way Northwest Indiana thinks. So thank you for your part in that, Jerry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you've been a great guest. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye.